Hey, hello, welcome everybody to this sessions of AMA. Today I am your host Justin Das. I am a project partner manager at BNB Chain where I cover infrastructure projects. And today we are introducing to you Web3 Auth. Now I will pass the next 2 minutes, 1 minute to Zen over here where he will share a little bit more about himself and about Web3 Auth.
Thanks, Justin, and thanks so much for having me. It's always been a pleasure talking and interacting with BNB Chain and Binance. Yeah, so I'm Zen. I'm one of the co-founders of Web3Auth, and what we do here is quite simple. We replace seed phrases on applications and wallets, and what we replace it with is we replace it with a MPC-enabled multi-factor key. Basically, it removes a single point of failure, that is seed phrases, and turns it into a multi-factor account, of which users can use a mixture of devices as well as like logins that they're familiar with to secure the public-private key pair in a non-custodial way.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's the backdrop of Web3 Auth. Now, before we go a little more into your demo and some questions that I prepared for you, would you like to share for our audience how you got into the crypto space and maybe a little bit about your background,
Oh,
your work, how it was correlated and that transition?
so let's see. My first experience of crypto was actually like Dogecoin. I'm not sure if like it was back in I think in 2015, 2016, and I was like an avid redditor. I was always there. um and Dogecoin really spun out of that. And I remember watching the trailer. If any of you haven't watched it before, you guys should check it out now. It's on YouTube. It's called Dogecoin to the Moon, and it's just watch it. Me explaining it wouldn't give it justice. But that was my first foray into crypto, and I ran a miner. I was interested in. I mean, it was interesting, but Bitcoin and Dogecoin didn't really super speak out to me because back then I think I was still a student and I was poor, and the financial crisis didn't really affect me. So um, so yeah, but now today, uh, I mean, it wasn't until Ethereum launched that I really got hooked into basically the programmability of it and the possibilities of what really coordinated compute could get. But once Ethereum kind of spun out, I was sold on it. At that point in time, I was a software engineer at Visa. I did a little bit of different projects, like Ethereum Foundation projects. So I worked on some interoperability things before Plasma and L2s all came about. It was, I mean, before L2s and rollups all came about, it was like Plasma, and it was like state channels. So I worked on one of the first few interoperability bridges between. I'm not sure if you remember ETC, Justin. Do you know ETC?
I've heard of it, but back then I was not a crypto native.
Right, right. So I mean, for the listeners as well, ETC was like like Ethereum hard forked because of a big hack, the DAO hack that happened at one point in time, which was very large in magnitude at that point in time. And because they hard forked, there was an existing chain of people that said like, "Oh, you shouldn't hard fork you," and basically that became the ETC chain, uh, and which is Ethereum Classic. And there was a little bit of tension between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. So I built what was supposed to be kind of like a diplomatic project, which was called a peace bridge, which is a bridge between bridging ETC and Ethereum together, such that people could like swap tokens on them. And yeah, did that. Did a couple of other like Plasma stuff, um, and then Web3 all started off as a side project back at that point in time. Binance actually is one of our first few investors, and that's really what kicked off the whole process. So, full circle. That's why I'm here.
That's pretty exciting. Now that you mention it, I do recall Ethereum Classic. I forgot the kind of initials, ETC. I remember it was like an $80 million hard fork that helped them recover funds, an $80 million recovery of funds.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was that was quite a
Fortunately,
big event.
nowadays, day to day, you're seeing like $1 billion hacks.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I think just 2 days ago there was another $100 million hack. I forgot which protocol it was, but it's intense. It's
It's a
getting more
dime,
and more.
a dime a
Yeah.
dozen.
Um, but yeah, carrying on. I know that your brand started off as Taurus around two years ago,
Mhm.
and so what was that rebranding process like, and why did that decision happen?
So, the first thing that we built was actually a wallet. And back then, the reason why we built that was with our key management was because we saw. I mean, back then there was only MetaMask around, right? So we were like, hey, let's build a wallet that felt a little bit better. And there were some people who thought in the same way. I don't know if people remember like Portis, Fortmatic, several others. I think we're the one of the only ones that are still around. But basically, we built a wallet first and competed with MetaMask and other wallets for market share. And we did relatively successfully, but not crazily. Nobody was really able to take true market share from like MetaMask and all. Um, and very early on, we recognized that, like within the first 6 months of us launching. So, and a lot of people started asking us instead of like using the wallet, they actually wanted just to use the key management and that and we pushed out that product. So we pushed that product. It's been out for like 2 years now, and we pushed that product out, and it was immediately super popular. But because we always had the Taurus wallet, but our more popular product was the wallet infrastructure, there was always a little bit of a disconnect because people would come to us going like, "Hey, are like you're a wallet? I want to use your," or "Hey, like I just want to use the key management," and they wouldn't really understand that they could use the underlying key management. And it was always like a little bit of a product hassle. So the rebrand was kind of to Taurus is still around. The Taurus wallet still exists. It still has like 1 million users, 2 million users on it, actively using it. Um, but Web3 Auth is now the rebrand happened because we wanted to focus and make very clearly distinct the difference between Taurus, the wallet, and Web3 Auth, the key management infrastructure that powers the Taurus wallets, as well as other wallets like Binance Chrome extension, for example.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Key management infrastructure is something that a lot of people may actually be interested in. Just curious if you had like a product demo that you could walk us through.
Yeah, for sure. So, and actually, it's a lot easier to see how we work if you just take a look at what we do. Um, so thanks for suggesting that. You can see my screen. Can you see me and my screen? And is it like
I think the screen is still in the process of sharing, and not yet visible.
okay? I mean, it says StreamYard.com is showing a window. Oh, how do I swap it over?
Yeah, sorry. I'm chatting with the tech support. Oh, reshare and choose tab.
Right. Does this work? Are you seeing it now?
Yes, yeah, seeing it now.
Okay. So this is
Perfect.
Cache, right? And this is an application that's integrated with. This is a wallet that's integrated with Web3 Auth, and logging into this wallet is as simple as my session is still saved. It's as simple as clicking a button, and I mean like logging in with one of your social logins, choosing which one, and you're into the application, and that's it. Now, whilst the user experience is super seamless, what happens behind the scenes to first make this non-custodial as well as secure is we actually split a user's public-private key pair into multiple different parts. So a key pair is what you use to interact with any blockchain, and a seed phrase basically derives a key pair or multiple key pairs. But for us, instead of like just having the seed phrase and then tossing the responsibility to the user to manage that and all that, we instead use things that a user already owns to help them manage their public-private key pair. And the first two things that they own when they access an application is, first, they own the login that they use. So it could be any social OAuth login. It could be Google, it could be Twitter, it could be Discord, it could be even your own login, right? And the second thing that a user owns when logging to an application is the device. So your key is split between these two factors, and you require 2 out of any of these parts to reconstruct your key pair. As the user uses the application more and more, or the key more and more, he or she is incrementally then onboarded into maybe keeping it on a different device, for example, like their phone, or perhaps like a backup token, or another backup email.
Oh,
And
sorry, Zen. Just double checking. The screen that you're sharing is still on the main page.
oh, I see. I was drawing. That's unfortunate. Let me reshare
Oh, I see.
this.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, because you're sharing tabs, so I think when you alt tab, it does not share
Yeah,
the
you're right.
alternative one.
Yeah, so
That's
yeah, we
okay.
split your key up into multiple different parts. As you can see, you have multiple different parts here. The first two parts are your device as well as your login. And as the user uses the account more, we basically incrementally onboard the user into adding different factors. Another device, a backup token, or perhaps like a backup email even. And in this way, you can automatically see two things. First, that users can log in via just logging in via their login social provider plus their device, and they can access a application or a wallet. Um, and the second thing, you can see that it's completely non-custodial, because even if Google or your social login were to be hacked or compromised, the hacker would still need to compromise your physical device or another factor that you have backed up somewhere to actually get your public-private key pair. So our key management to date has been integrated into like lots of different applications and different ecosystems. It's hard to show you guys because I'm just on one page here, but we're on Binance Chrome extension. We're on the most popular wallet on Tezos, which is Kukai. We're on the most popular wallet on Cosmos, which is Kepler. We are we're integrated also with several with Skyweaver wallet and Polygon, um, a lot of your popular dApps, some large IP which is Web2 coming into Web3, like 100 Thieves, Ubisoft, BMW, Fox.com. And yeah, so we have about 15 million users on our key management to date, about 600 live applications, and that's basically how it works.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So actually, compared to kind of self-custodial wallets, um, what I want to ask right now is a little bit more about security. So we understand that self-custodial are kind of like social logins for a user using Web3 Auth. So can you kind of like just explain that process or elaborate a little bit more on, that social login process for self-custodial wallets?
So
Did you
self,
get what I mean?
not,
Um,
well, not really.
let, let
So
me
I
let
mean,
me rephrase that. Yeah, if you don't
okay.
mind, let me rephrase that. So, how secure are these self-custodial wallets for for a user using Web3 Auth?
Okay. So, um, is your question how is it self-custodial, or is your question like what is the security guarantees that a user can expect?
So yeah, this is self-custodial, right? So
Yeah.
the question is more about the on the security side.
So
Yeah.
when you're talking about the guarantees that a user can expect, right? The guarantees are basically like a multi-factor account. So I guess the easiest comparison to compare this to is basically a seed phrase, right? With a seed phrase, you have a single factor public-private key pair, and you basically keep it on a device, and perhaps you back it up somewhere, right? If anybody steals your seed phrase, or like makes a unsuspecting user submit their seed phrase to them, which unfortunately phishing scams happen all the time these days, right? A user basically loses their public-private key pair completely. The difference between us and a seed phrase then becomes that instead, if a user loses any one of these factors, right, they're actually still 100% safe. A hacker would not have stolen the public-private key pair just yet. If if a application if you and basically if you like perhaps like lose like a backup token by a phishing attack, like a naive user puts it in a random website or something like that, you also don't lose your private key pair because you need any two of these factors to reconstruct your key. A user can then like take measures after understanding that they've been compromised or one of the factors have been compromised by deleting this factor. And there's no problem with that. There's revocability baked in. Now, if the user is worried about losing two factors and wants even more security, our system actually allows applications as well as wallets to integrate higher thresholds of factors being required to reconstruct the user's private key pair. So for example, you can increment it to 3 out of n factors, which means that you need maybe like social login, a device, and another device to interact with the key pair. And if you lose, like let's say, even if you lose one of your devices and your social login, you still haven't lost your public-private key pair. So it's really incremental, both incremental onboarding as well as incremental security and incrementing a user security as they need it.
Got you. Yeah, yeah. That's a lot more clear in terms of social logins, because in kind of Web2 platforms, a lot of accounts are very usually compromised. Like we're seeing a lot of hacks on Instagram and Facebook these days.
Yeah.
That very clearly answers authentication. Another question that I had also relating to security is, so what happens? Like, can you take us through the process, like a step-by-step process, on what happens if a user loses access to their phone, as well as like social logins plus backup email, because a lot of the time these are linked. So, what would that process kind of look like?
So, I mean, as long as you have any, let's say, 2 of n factors over here, right? Let's say you're in a 2 of n setup. As long as you have any 2 out of these factors, you can reconstruct your private key pair, either by going to a static website or cloning a tool, right, to reconstruct it yourself, or by, going to the Web3 offsite as well. And it's always on your local devices and only lives there. In particular, if you lose more, if you don't have enough factors, if you don't have 2 factors, right, you do actually lose your private key pair. And that's because, it's the compromise of custodial versus non-custodial, right? In a custodial setup, you can reset an account and reset. But in a non-custodial setup, only the user has access to the private key pair. So if the user mismanages it and loses all of the factors, which is incredibly unlikely actually, because we incrementally, we have reminders and systems in place to remind users to increment the number of factors, make sure they're there, and that's what we do. That's the whole setup of why we exist. But in the case where they actually do lose all like n factors, they actually lose their key pair.
Yeah, thanks for walking through the process. Because yeah, as we all understand, a lot of very typically used wallets like MetaMask, for example, comprises of a password and a seed phrase login. So you lose those two, there's absolutely nothing else you can do to retrieve your account.
Yep, 100%. At least with us, you have a couple more things and solutions that you can work with.
Exactly, it's a very interesting process on the back end. So curious, can Web3 auth be used for non-blockchain based apps as well?
Actually, yes. And there have been one or two like MVPs that have done so, not many, but actually yes. So like, and the simplest way to think about this is really like applications simply just like Signal, like messaging applications. These applications don't need to interact with a blockchain, but they do need a public-private key pair to do user encryption, decryption, end-to-end encryption of messages, right? And ultimately, that's what we and ultimately like this. That's what we essentially provide, like user-based keys, which then users can use and do whatever they want.
Yeah, right. Totally got that. Um, if a user wants to add additional layers of security, on Web3 auth, how how would that journey look like, or what kind of steps do they need to take?
So as I mentioned before, you basically increase this threshold such that you basically you require more of these factors to actually access your public private key pair. Um, and and uh, and that's basically how you increment the level of security, because the more you require, the more factors a hacker has to go through to actually compromise your account, and you're increasing your level of security in that way.
Yeah, got you. I actually saw one of your videos on Twitter. I think it was a demo, and there is a way of biometric authentication. Is that there? Just double checking.
So you can use biometric authentication as one of the factors, basically. Um,
Okay.
and it's via the standard called WebAuthn. And you can use your fingerprint to basically log in to your account. And perhaps I could show you guys here if it's still working for me. Um, it's a flow that we've been actively working on and trying to encourage with some of our applications and users, and it's a factor that is possible, but um, it is still basically one of the more unique flows which are out there. So if you see this right, I can click like enable biometrics. Okay, it's not working right now at this point, unfortunately for this demo.
Yeah, that's okay, because I understand the ease of use would be a lot more smoother.
Yeah, on mobile, using biometrics is something that we actively work on. I mean, we actively provide as well. On web, it's a bit harder.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, unless you're using like a MacBook Pro, I think they have an inbuilt finger scanning device.
No, but even
Uh,
kind of like accessing, so like just because although they do have it, they don't necessarily expose it to the web level. You get what I mean?
right. Actually, good point. I definitely get what you mean there. Um, so moving on, I actually had a couple more questions for around alternatives. So let's say, is Web3 art kind of, do you think, the next generation of current wallets that we kind of talked about that only have you know uh, two layers of security? How do you consider Web3 art?
So we are actually actively talking to different wallets, and I mean we're already integrated to tons of them, right? And but we're also talking to some of the larger wallets in the space, and actively being provided as an alternative to seed phrases. Like we want to be integrated into these wallets to provide their users with better key management. And You have seen some uptake of this key management on very popular wallets as well, other than the wallets which are already integrated with us. Like for example, Coinbase wallet just launched their MPC flow as well, and it's exactly like this too. So, um, so yeah, we definitely encourage wallets. One of our main target markets and who we really want to be integrated on and talk with our wallets, and we hope to be integrated into more wallets in the ecosystem, because ultimately seed phrases need to go, man. Like, did you know that seed phrases have contributed to the loss of about 20% of all Bitcoin in circulation?
Wow, that's actually quite a large volume.
Yeah, it's even at today's market value, it's like 200 or 100 billion, you know?
Actually, just curious, what are the general kind of reasons behind people losing their seed phrase? Is it something very general, like they forgot, their Google Doc password, or they keep it? Like, what are the main reasons
Oh, losing Web3 Auth or losing like seed
of
phrases?
losing seed phrases for traditional or
So I
general
mean,
crypto?
it goes from like losing your device to forgetting your password to all the way down to it actually being, sometimes you want to like phishing attacks, like sites like asking for your seed phrase and then maliciously using them and stealing your funds. Yeah, so I mean, it's all over the place. It's a mixture of those three.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. One question that also came up. So I understand you mentioned about Coinbase also developing this kind of process. Who would you say are some of the main competitors in this space around key management?
So there's nobody who really does what we do and offers it to wallets as a service, but there's always the build versus buy decision. Some wallets may choose to build it themselves, like how Coinbase chose to build it themselves internally. They acquired a team to do so. And I wouldn't be surprised if one or two of the other larger wallets did the same. But ultimately, we're here to democratize and allow this technology to be used by many different wallets. I don't think there's anybody else doing what we do in the same way with our MPC technology. There's some people who have done this, like pairing social logins to different keys, but they've done it custodially in a custodial setup. For example, Magic. I'm not sure if you've heard of Magic Link, but they basically use a AWS HSM to store public-private key pairs, and that's a custodial setup relative to ours, which is a non-custodial setup.
All right, yeah, that paints a very clear distinction, custodial and non-custodial setups. So we're actually running a little short on time. So before we, ask little questions from our panel, um, final question: what are some of the upcoming features? So we understand you've got a great following on Twitter, but of course, everybody's excited about the roadmap for Web3 Auth moving
100%.
forward.
So I think the most upcoming feature is definitely an upgrade of our backend infrastructure. Right now, we're at like 15 million users, and 15 million users is the infrastructure only handles like 120 million users. And that's very scary when you're coming from a development perspective and an infrastructure perspective. Now, so we're upgrading our infrastructure in the next 2 or 3 months, which will like increase the number of users that we can handle by 2 magnitudes. And for us, we're just looking forward. I mean, people can expect a higher level of MPC security, faster load times, better availability across the world, better uptime with this infrastructure. At the same time, just better scale. So that's what we're quite focused on at this point.
Definitely. And just curious, what does your timeline look like for that? Like
That's coming out. It'll come on Q3. It'll come on Q3.
Q3. All right, that's very soon. That's very exciting.
It is. It is.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. So now, before we close off, just want to check if our audience here have any further questions for Web3 Auth. So currently looking through the YouTube comments.
How do I look through the YouTube comments?
So there's a
The
bar
comments,
on the right. Yeah, it's linked with YouTube.
there don't seem to
Well,
be many
yeah,
questions.
That should be it. No further questions. And once again, really excited for the developments for your product, Q3. And if you're watching this and you're interested in a very new experience in wallet management, do check out Web3 Auth. Follow them on Twitter, and keep up to date with them. Once again, thank you so much for joining me here today, Zen. Really wish you and your team all the best, and you a good night. I understand you are based in an Asian time zone.
Yeah, no, but no worries. Yeah, no, yeah. Thanks a lot, and thanks so much for having me, Justin. Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a